The metallic scent of blood hung thick in the night air as Luna Blackthorn stepped over another fallen warrior, her silver blade gleaming crimson under the full moon. 300 of them. The Alpha King's most elite guard, reduced to nothing but lifeless forms scattered across the field like broken dolls. She should have felt triumphant. This was the moment she'd trained her entire life for, the night that would cement her legend among the Order. Instead, an odd emptiness settled in her chest as she surveyed the carnage. 23 years, she whispered to the wind, wiping her blade clean on her black leather jacket. 23 years of preparation for this. The Crimson Field had earned its name tonight. Luna moved through the battlefield with practiced efficiency, checking each body for signs of life. The Order had taught her well, never leave an enemy breathing, never assume death without confirmation. Her silver weapons had done their work perfectly, each strike calculated and lethal. But where was he? She paused, scanning the tree line beyond the field. Alpha King Dante Ravencrest should have been here, leading his men as he always did. Unless... A low growl rumbled from the shadows at the edge of the forest. Luna's grip tightened on her blade as a massive figure emerged from between the ancient oaks. Even in human form, Dante Ravencrest commanded attention, 6.5 feet of lethal grace, with midnight black hair and a face that could have been carved from marble. But it was his eyes that made her breath catch. Golden. Predatory. And fixed entirely on her. Impressive, his voice carried across the field, rich and dark as aged whiskey. Though I confess, I expected more of a challenge from my men. Luna raised her chin, ignoring the way her pulse quickened. Your men were weak. My men were the finest warriors in the Northern Territory. He stepped over the body of his fallen lieutenant without looking down. Which makes you your executioner. Dante's laugh was pure velvet wrapped around steel. Is that what you think? She'd studied him for years, memorized every report, every photograph, every detail the Order had gathered. But nothing had prepared her for the raw magnetism that seemed to pulse from him with each step he took toward her. I know what you are, Luna said, sliding into a defensive stance. Monster. Killer. The beast that's terrorized innocent people for decades. And you're the huntress raised by humans to be my destruction. His golden eyes seemed to see straight through her. Seraphina Blackthorn. Though you prefer Luna now, don't you? The use of her birth name made her falter for just a moment. How do you? I know many things about you, little huntress. He was close now, close enough that she could see the flecks of amber in his otherworldly eyes. Including the fact that you're about to discover everything you believe is a lie. Luna struck without warning, her silver blade singing through the air in a perfect arc aimed at his throat. But Dante didn't dodge. He didn't even flinch. Instead, the moment their eyes truly met, the moment she saw her own reflection in those molten gold depths, the world exploded. Heat slammed into her like a physical force, starting somewhere deep in her chest and radiating outward until every nerve ending screamed with awareness. Her blade clattered to the ground as she stumbled backward, gasping. No. The word tore from her throat. No, this isn't possible. Dante had gone perfectly still, his own expression shifting from predatory amusement to something that looked almost like reverence. When he spoke, his voice had dropped to barely above a whisper. Mate. The word hit her harder than any blow she'd ever taken. Luna shook her head violently, pressing her hands to her temples as if she could somehow block out the truth blazing between them. I'm human, she gasped. I'm human, I can't, this doesn't happen to humans. But even as she spoke, she could feel the lie in her bones. The connection burning bright as a star between them, the way her body recognized his on some primal level that had nothing to do with training or logic. Dante dropped to one knee in the blood-soaked grass, his head bowed. Luna Blackthorn, he said formally, his voice carrying across the silent battlefield. You are my mate. My queen. The other half of my soul. Get up. She backed away from him, her hand fumbling for the silver dagger at her hip. Get up and fight me. He raised his head, and she saw something that made her chest tight with panic, not rage, not the fury of a king whose army lay slaughtered at her feet. Instead, his expression held a devastating combination of wonder and acceptance. "I cannot fight what the moon has ordained," he said simply. "And neither can you." Luna's fingers closed around her dagger, but her hand was shaking so badly she could barely grip it. "You're wrong. I've spent my entire life training to kill you. I won't, I can't. The bond doesn't lie, little huntress." Dante rose slowly, his movements careful and non-threatening despite the death she'd dealt to his men. "You feel it too. The pull. The recognition." She did. God help her, she did. Even now, with 300 werewolf corpses between them, something deep inside her yearned to close the distance between them. To discover if his skin was as warm as it looked, if those strong hands would be gentle or demanding. The thought terrified her more than any monster ever had. "This is impossible," she whispered. "Many impossible things happen under the full moon." His voice was gentle now, coaxing. "The question is, what will you do with this truth?" Luna looked around at the carnage she'd created, the life's work that had led to this moment. The Order expected her to return with Dante's head. They'd trained her, housed her, given her purpose. They were the only family she'd ever known. But the man standing before her, the one who should be her greatest enemy, was looking at her like she was something precious. Something worth protecting rather than destroying. "I have to go." The words tumbled out before she could stop them. Dante nodded as if he'd expected nothing less. "You can run from me, little huntress," he said, his golden eyes never leaving hers. "But you cannot run from what we are." Luna turned and fled, leaving her silver blade gleaming in the grass behind her. But even as she ran through the dark forest, Dante's words echoed in her mind, and she knew with sinking certainty that nothing would ever be the same. Behind her, she could swear she heard him whisper to the night wind, "I'll be waiting when you're ready to come home." The mate bond pulsed between them like a living thing, stretching but never breaking as she disappeared into the shadows. And for the first time in her life, Luna Blackthorn, legendary huntress, weapon of the Order, had no idea what came next. Wanting to see what would happen next, subscribe to this channel to get to listen to more of our upcoming exciting stories. Click on the subscribe button now. Thank you. Chapter 2. The hunter's citadel rose from the mountainside like a blade thrust into the earth, its black stone walls scarred by centuries of warfare. Luna had always found comfort in its imposing silhouette, but tonight it felt different. Tonight, even the familiar sight of home couldn't ease the burning ache in her chest where the mate bond pulsed like a second heartbeat. She'd run for 3 hours straight, pushing her body to its limits, trying to outpace the memory of golden eyes and the impossible truth they'd revealed. But no amount of distance could silence Dante's words, "You cannot run from what we are." The courtyard was empty as she slipped through the main gate, her footsteps echoing off the ancient stones. Most of the Order would be asleep by now, but Luna knew Commander Aldrich Voss would be waiting. He always waited when she returned from a mission, ready with warm brandy and quiet praise for another successful hunt. Tonight, she needed that normalcy more than ever. The heavy oak door to his study stood slightly ajar, candlelight flickering through the gap. Luna paused outside, suddenly aware of how she must look, her black leathers torn and blood-stained, her weapons missing, her hands still trembling from whatever unholy power had awakened between her and the Alpha King. "Come in, Luna." Aldrich's voice was different somehow. Colder. "We have much to discuss." She pushed the door open and stepped inside, but the warm welcome she'd expected never came. Instead, Commander Aldrich Voss, the man who'd raised her, trained her, loved her like a father, stood with his back to her, staring out the tall windows at the moonlit mountains beyond. "Commander?" Luna's voice caught slightly. The mission was successful. Dante Ravencrest's guard is eliminated. But not Dante himself. It wasn't a question. Luna swallowed hard, her mouth suddenly dry. There were complications. Aldrich turned then, and Luna's breath hitched. In 23 years, she'd never seen such fury in his pale blue eyes. His weathered face was carved from granite, his silver hair gleaming in the candlelight like a blade. Complications, he repeated, the word dripping with contempt. Is that what you call failing to complete your primary objective? I can explain. Can you? He moved toward her with predatory grace, and for the first time in her life, Luna felt afraid of the man who'd been her anchor. Can you explain why you fled the battlefield like a coward? Why you left your weapons behind? Why you've returned to me reeking of wolf? Luna's hand instinctively moved to her throat, where she could still feel the phantom touch of Dante's gaze. How do you? I know many things, my dear girl. Aldrich's smile was sharp as winter frost. Including what happened when you looked into his eyes. The bottom dropped out of Luna's world. That's impossible. You couldn't know unless I'd been expecting it. Aldrich moved to his desk, pouring himself a measure of amber liquid from a crystal decanter. Tell me, Luna, what do you know about your parents? The question hit her like a physical blow. In all her years at the Citadel, Aldrich had only ever told her that her parents died when she was an infant, casualties in the war against the supernatural. She'd never pressed for details, too grateful for the life he'd given her to dig into painful history. They died fighting wolves, she said automatically. You saved me from. I saved you, Aldrich interrupted, taking a slow sip of his drink. That much is true. But not from wolves, child. I saved you from your own blood. Luna felt the world tilt around her. What are you talking about? Sit down. I don't want to sit down. I want you to explain what. Sit down. The command cracked like a whip, and Luna found herself sinking into the leather chair across from his desk before she could stop herself. Some part of her mind registered that his voice held an odd power, but she was too focused on the growing dread in her stomach to analyze it. Aldrich moved to the fireplace, staring into the flames as if seeing into the past. When he spoke, his voice was distant, almost conversational. 20 years ago, I was captain of a specialized hunting unit. Our target was Lycaean Ravencrest, Dante's father and the most powerful Alpha King the Northern Territory had ever known. He'd been building alliances, uniting packs that had warred for centuries. Making them stronger. More organized. Luna's hands gripped the arms of her chair. Commander. He had a mate, Aldrich continued as if she hadn't spoken. Beautiful creature. Golden hair, eyes like emeralds. They said she could calm his beast with a single touch, that their bond was so strong it made both of them nearly invincible in battle. The fire crackled in the hearth, the only sound in the suffocating silence that followed. They had a daughter. Luna's breath stopped entirely. A perfect little princess with her mother's eyes and her father's strength. The future of their bloodline. The key to werewolf supremacy. Aldrich turned from the fire, his pale eyes finding hers across the room. You were barely 2 years old when I put silver through your father's heart. No. The word tore from Luna's throat like a prayer. No, that's not, you're lying. I killed your mother while she wept over his body, Aldrich said with chilling calm. And then I took you. Their precious heir. The weapon I would forge to destroy everything they'd built. Luna shot to her feet, her chair clattering backward. You're insane. I'm human. I've always been. Human? Aldrich laughed, the sound like breaking glass. My dear, deluded child. Did you never wonder why you could see in perfect darkness? Why your reflexes were faster than any humans should be? Why you could track prey across miles of wilderness? Training, Luna gasped. You said it was all training. Enhanced by wolfsbane, Aldrich moved to a cabinet, withdrawing a small vial of purple liquid. Do you recognize this? The vitamin supplements I've given you every day since you were old enough to swallow them? Luna stared at the vial in horror. Wolfsbane, the poison that could weaken or kill supernatural creatures. She'd been consuming it daily for over 20 years. You've been drugging me. I've been keeping you controllable. Aldrich set the vial on his desk with deliberate care. Suppressing your true nature so you could serve your purpose. And you have served it beautifully, my dear. Every werewolf you've killed, every pack you've scattered, you've been destroying your own kind without ever knowing it. The room spun around her. Luna pressed her hands to her temples, trying to process the magnitude of his betrayal. Why? Why tell me this now? Because your usefulness has come to an end. Aldrich's voice was matter-of-fact, as if discussing the weather. The moment you made eye contact with Dante Ravencrest, the moment that mating bonds snapped into place, you became a liability. The wolfsbane can only suppress so much, and mate bonds, well, they have a way of burning through even the strongest suppressants. As if summoned by his words, heat suddenly flared in Luna's chest, the same devastating awareness she'd felt on the battlefield. But stronger now, more insistent. He's coming for you, Aldrich said, watching her face with clinical interest. Can you feel it? The pull? The need? Luna wrapped her arms around herself, trying to contain the fire spreading through her veins. Make it stop. I'm afraid that's no longer possible. Which brings us to our current situation. A thunderous knock echoed through the citadel, the sound reverberating off stone walls like a war drum. Aldrich smiled. Right on schedule. Heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor outside, accompanied by voices raised in alarm. Luna recognized the authoritative tone of Captain Morris, head of Citadel Security. Commander Voss. There's a delegation at the gates. They're demanding. The study door burst open without ceremony, and Captain Morris stumbled inside, his face pale with fear. Behind him stood a man Luna had never seen before, tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair streaked with silver and eyes like winter storms. Commander, Morris gasped. This is Marcus Blackwood. He claims to be Beta of the Northern Territory, the stranger finished, his voice carrying absolute authority. And I'm here to collect what belongs to my Alpha. Luna felt the blood drain from her face as those storm-gray eyes fixed on her. There was something familiar about his features, something that made recognition tug at the edges of her memory. Luna Ravencrest, Marcus said, and her heart nearly stopped at the use of that surname. Your maid is waiting. She is not Luna Ravencrest, Aldrich said smoothly, moving to stand between them. She is Luna Blackthorn, daughter of no one, and she serves the order. Marcus's laugh was pure menace. Is that what you've told her? Poor child. His eyes softened as they returned to Luna's face. You don't remember me, do you, little star? I'm your uncle. Your mother's brother. Luna's legs nearly gave out. Uncle? Elara was my sister, Marcus said gently. And when Aldrich Voss murdered her, he stole the most precious thing in our world, you. Touching, Aldrich said dryly. But this reunion will have to wait. Luna, step away from him. But Luna couldn't move. The heat in her chest was spreading, racing through her bloodstream like liquid fire. Her skin felt too tight, her bones aching with a pressure she'd never experienced. What's happening to me? She whispered. Marcus's expression turned urgent. The suppressants are wearing off. Seeing your mate triggered something the wolfsbane can't contain anymore. You need to come with me now, before. Before what? Aldrich's voice had turned deadly quiet. Before her first transformation kills her, Marcus snarled. Adult wolves who shift for the first time without proper guidance often don't survive the process. She needs her pack. She needs her mate. She needs to fulfill her purpose. Aldrich opened another desk drawer, withdrawing something that made Luna's blood turn to ice, silver chains, inscribed with runes that seemed to ride in the candlelight. Captain Morris, restrain her. Sir. Morris looked confused. Commander, what? She's not human, you fool, Aldrich snapped. She never was. She's a werewolf, and she's about to transform. Those chains will hold her. Luna backed toward the door, but Aldrich was faster. His hand shot out, grasping her wrist with inhuman strength. The moment his skin touched hers, agony exploded through her arm, the scent of burning flesh filled the air. Silver, Marcus roared, lunging forward. He has silver on his hands. But Aldrich was already wrapping the enchanted chains around Luna's wrists, and where they touched her skin, they burned like brands. She screamed, falling to her knees as the metal seared into her flesh. 20 years, Aldrich said conversationally, securing the chains to iron rings set into the stone floor, rings Luna now realized had always been there, waiting. 20 years I've planned for this moment. The perfect revenge against the bloodline that nearly destroyed humanity's dominance. Luna tried to speak, but the pain was overwhelming. The fire in her veins had turned to molten metal, racing through her body in waves that made her vision blur. You see, Aldrich continued, dodging Marcus's furious charge with inhuman grace, I'm not entirely human myself. Witch blood runs in my veins, old magic, older than your precious werewolf bonds. And I've had 2 decades to prepare the perfect prison for a wolf. Let her go, Marcus commanded, but Aldrich only smiled. Watch, he said. Watch as the last heir of Lycaean Ravencrest dies in agony, bound by silver and abandoned by her mate. But even as he spoke, something fundamental shifted inside Luna's body. The burning sensation suddenly changed, becoming something else entirely, not destruction, but transformation. Her bones began to elongate, her muscles shifting and expanding beneath her skin. No, Aldrich breathed, his confidence wavering for the first time. The chains should hold. Luna threw back her head and howled, a sound that shattered every window in the room and echoed across the mountains like a battle cry. When she looked up, her eyes blazed with golden fire, and her canine teeth had elongated into fangs. The silver chain still burned, but she could feel something else now, a connection stretching across the miles, strong as steel cable. Dante. He was coming, and his fury shook the very foundations of the earth. Hello, Uncle, she said to Marcus, her voice rougher now, carrying harmonics that made the stones tremble. Then she fixed her burning gaze on Aldrich, and smiled with teeth designed for tearing. And goodbye, Commander. The man who'd raised her, trained her, betrayed her in the most fundamental way possible, took an involuntary step backward as power radiated from her bound form like heat from a forge. Outside, in the distance, the howl of wolves answered her call, dozens of them, then hundreds, their voices weaving together in a song of vengeance that made the very mountains shake. The chains still burned her flesh, but Luna Ravencrest, daughter of kings, mate to an alpha, and weapon forged from love and lies, was finally, truly awake. If you're still listening to this story up to this point, why don't you subscribe to this channel to continue getting impactful daily stories like this? We would be most grateful if you can do that to help boost this video to reach everyone. Thank you. Chapter 3. The howl that tore from Luna's throat was still echoing through the mountains when the first explosion shook the citadel. Ancient stones cracked and crumbled as something massive struck the outer walls with the force of a battering ram. Marcus threw himself against the study door, barricading it as the sounds of battle erupted throughout the fortress. He's here, he said grimly, his storm-gray eyes fixed on Luna's partially transformed form. And he's not alone. Luna barely heard him. The silver chains around her wrists burned like acid, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the agony tearing through her mind. Every memory she'd cherished, every moment of love and pride she'd shared with Aldrich, had been poisoned by the truth. She was a weapon forged from the bones of her own family, a monster who'd spent 20 years destroying her own kind. The chains binding her to the floor grew tighter as her body continued its transformation. Her spine elongated, muscles rippling beneath skin that felt like it was splitting apart. Golden fur sprouted along her arms, and her fingernails had become claws capable of rending steel. The artifacts, Aldrich said suddenly, his voice cutting through the chaos outside. He was moving frantically around the room, stuffing ancient books and crystalline objects into a leather satchel. 20 years of preparation won't be wasted on sentiment. You're not going anywhere, Marcus snarled, but Aldrich merely smiled. Aren't I? He pulled something from his robes, a small silver disc covered in runes. Did you think I'd spend 2 decades in this fortress without preparing escape routes? Another explosion rocked the building, closer this time. Through the shattered windows, Luna could hear the sounds of werewolves engaging the citadel's defenders, snarls and screams mixing with the clash of silver weapons. Luna! The roar came from somewhere below them, filled with such rage and desperation that the remaining windows exploded inward. Where is she? Dante's voice hit Luna like a physical blow, and something fundamental shifted inside her. The mate bond, which had been a whisper since their encounter on the battlefield, suddenly blazed to life with the intensity of a star going nova. No, she gasped, fighting against the pull. I won't be his weapon too. But even as she spoke, her wolf surged toward the surface with renewed fury. The silver chains groaned under the pressure of her transformation, and for a moment she thought they might actually break. That's when the study door exploded inward. Dante Ravencrest filled the doorway like an avenging god, his human form barely containing the beast within. His golden eyes blazed with lethal fire as they swept the room, taking in Marcus pressed against the far wall, Aldrich clutching his satchel of stolen artifacts, and Luna bound in silver chains that were slowly burning her alive. The Alpha King's roar of fury when he saw her condition shattered what remained of the windows. I'm going to kill you slowly, he said to Aldrich, his voice carrying harmonics that made the stone walls tremble. I'm going to tear you apart piece by piece and feed your remains to the ravens. But Luna's reaction wasn't relief or gratitude. The moment she saw him, something primal and violent erupted from her chest. This was the man whose bloodline had destroyed everything, whose father had failed to protect her parents, whose existence had made her a target from birth. She launched herself at him with a snarl of pure rage. The silver chains snapped like spider webs under the force of her assault. Luna's partially transformed body slammed into Dante with enough force to send them both crashing through the wall and into the corridor beyond. Stone and timber exploded around them as they rolled across the floor, Luna's claws seeking his throat while Dante tried desperately to restrain her without causing harm. Luna, stop! Marcus's voice followed them into the hallway. He's not your enemy. But Luna was beyond reason. 20 years of suppressed wolf instincts combined with the trauma of Aldrich's revelations had created a perfect storm of violence. She was no longer human Luna, trained and controlled, nor was she fully wolf. She was something caught between, feral, broken, and convinced that everyone who'd ever claimed to care for her was a liar. Dante's hands caught her wrists as her claws descended toward his face. Little huntress, he said softly, his golden eyes never leaving hers even as she struggled against his grip. I know you're in there. I know you can hear me. You don't know anything. Luna snarled, her voice distorted by fangs and fury. I'm the monster you should have killed on that battlefield. You're my mate, Dante said simply. You're the other half of my soul, and I will not let Aldrich's poison destroy what we are. Luna's response was to sink her elongated canines into his shoulder, tasting blood and power and something indefinably right. Dante's grunt of pain was followed by a growl so deep it seemed to come from the earth itself. Enough. The alpha command hit Luna like a physical blow, and for a moment her wolf submitted purely on instinct. But the human part of her, the part that had been trained to resist and kill, rebelled immediately. They crashed through another wall, this one leading to the fortress's main hall. Ancient tapestries depicting humanity's victories over supernatural creatures burned around them as Luna's claws raked across Dante's chest, drawing 4 parallel lines of blood. Fight back, she screamed at him. Prove what you really are. But Dante refused to shift, refused to meet her violence with his own. Instead, he absorbed her attacks while trying to pin her down, his voice a constant murmur of reassurance and promises she couldn't believe. Your parents loved you, he said as her claws found his ribs. They died protecting you and your brother. I don't have a brother. Luna's neck strike went wide as his words penetrated her rage. Aldrich said. Aldrich lied about everything. Dante caught both her wrists and pinned them above her head, his larger frame finally subduing her struggles. Your brother Marcus is my uncle, Luna gasped, confusion cutting through her fury. Marcus Blackwood. He said he was my mother's brother. Something shifted in Dante's expression, surprise, then a flash of what looked like guilt. No, little huntress. Marcus Blackwood is my beta. Your brother is Marcus Ravencrest. He's 16 now, and he's been living under my protection since the night Aldrich murdered your parents." The world stopped. Luna stared up at Dante, her partially transformed body going completely still. "What?" "Your parents had 2 children," Dante said gently, his thumb stroking over the burns on her wrists where the silver had marked her. "You were the eldest, but when they died, your baby brother survived. Aldrich only took you because you were the more obvious threat, the future alpha female. He left Marcus because he thought a 2-year-old boy was useless." "No." The word was barely a whisper. "That's impossible." "Marcus has your mother's eyes," Dante continued, his voice achingly tender. "Green as spring leaves. And he has your father's gift for strategy. I've raised him as my own, but he's always known the truth about who he is. About who you are." Luna's transformation began to reverse itself, fur receding and bones shifting back to human proportions. But the emotional pain was worse than any physical agony she'd endured. "I have a brother," she said wonderingly. "A living brother. Who's been waiting 16 years to meet his sister." The sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the ruined hall. Marcus Blackwood appeared in the doorway, his weathered face grim as he took in the destruction around them. "Alpha," he said to Dante. "Aldrich escaped through the lower levels. He triggered some kind of transportation spell, took half the fortress's archives with him." Dante's jaw tightened, but he didn't release Luna. "How many casualties?" "Surprisingly few. Most of the Order's hunters fled when they realized what was happening. Cowards, the lot of them." Marcus's eyes softened as they fixed on Luna. "Though I think we found something more valuable than revenge." Luna tried to sit up, but Dante's hands on her shoulders kept her still. "Let me go," she said quietly. "Please. Not until I know you won't try to kill me again." Luna looked around at the devastation they'd caused, shattered stone, burning tapestries, the scent of blood and smoke heavy in the air. "I destroyed everything. Buildings can be rebuilt," Dante said. "What matters is that you're safe." But Luna shook her head. "I'm not safe. I'm exactly what Aldrich said I was, a weapon. A monster who destroys everything she touches." "You're a woman who's been tortured and lied to for 20 years, Marcus said firmly. "What happened here isn't your fault. Isn't it?" Luna's laugh was bitter. "I spent my entire life killing werewolves. Your people. My people. How many families did I destroy? How many children did I leave orphaned?" The weight of her actions settled on her like a physical thing, crushing and inescapable. Every hunt, every kill, every moment of pride she'd felt in her work, all of it had been built on lies and the bones of her own kind. "The past cannot be changed," Dante said softly. "But the future is still ours to write." Luna finally met his eyes, seeing not the golden fire of earlier but something infinitely more dangerous, hope. "How can you look at me like that? How can you want someone who's done what I've done?" "Because I know who you really are," Dante said. "Not the weapon Aldrich tried to forge, but the woman underneath. Strong, fierce, protective. You've spent 20 years fighting for what you believed was right. Now you have a chance to fight for what actually is right. And what's that? Your family. Your pack. Your people." Dante's hand cupped her cheek, thumb brushing away a tear she hadn't realized was falling. "Your mate." Luna closed her eyes, feeling the pull of the bond between them like gravity itself. It would be so easy to give in, to let herself be swept away by the promise of belonging somewhere. But the memory of Aldrich's satisfied smile as he'd revealed her true nature wouldn't leave her alone. "He's still out there," she said. "Aldrich. And he has artifacts from your people, weapons that could be used against werewolves." "We'll find him," Marcus said grimly. "The Order has other strongholds, other resources. This isn't over." "No," Luna said, pushing herself up to sitting despite Dante's hands on her shoulders. "It's not over. But it's not your fight anymore." Dante's eyes narrowed. "What are you saying?" Luna looked between him and Marcus, her mate and her uncle, both offering her something she'd never had, family that chose to love her rather than use her. The temptation to accept their protection, to let them handle the consequences of her actions, was overwhelming. But 20 years of training had taught her something valuable: responsibility couldn't be delegated. "I'm saying Aldrich is my responsibility," she said quietly. "I'm the weapon he forged, the monster he created. I know how he thinks, how he operates. I can find him in ways you can't." "Absolutely not," Dante said, his voice carrying the weight of alpha command. "You're not going anywhere alone." Luna's newly awakened wolf bristled at the order, and she bared her teeth instinctively. "You don't get to command me. I get to protect what's mine. I'm not a thing to be protected." Luna's voice echoed through the ruined hall. "I'm a person who's made choices, terrible choices. And I need to make better ones." Marcus stepped forward, his expression thoughtful. "What exactly are you proposing?" Luna took a shaky breath, feeling the weight of her decision settling around her like armor. "I'm proposing we hunt him down together. All of us. But as equals, not as alpha and submissive mate." "The pack," Dante began. "We'll follow where you lead," Luna interrupted. "But I won't be led. I've spent my entire life being someone else's weapon. If I'm going to be a weapon again, it'll be by my own choice, for my own reasons." She stood slowly, her body still aching from the transformation, and faced the two men who represented everything she'd lost and everything she might gain. "I want to meet him," she said quietly. "My brother. I want to know what my parents were really like. I want to understand what it means to be part of a pack instead of a tool for killing one." Dante rose with her, his golden eyes searching her face. "And then?" Luna's smile was sharp as silver, carrying promises of violence and justice in equal measure. "Then we make Aldrich Voss pay for every lie he ever told, every life he ever stole, and every year he kept me from my family." "That could take a very long time," Marcus observed. "Good," Luna said, feeling something settle into place inside her chest. "Not peace, but purpose. I have a lot of years to make up for." Dante stepped closer, his hand finding hers despite the burns still marking her wrists. "Together?" Luna looked down at their joined hands, her pale skin marked with silver scars, his bearing the claw marks she'd given him in her rage. They were both wounded, both carrying the weight of impossible circumstances, but they were also both still standing. "Together," she agreed. "But as partners, not as alpha and mate bound by supernatural law." "I can live with that," Dante said softly. "As long as you can live with the fact that I will always choose to stand beside you, supernatural law or not." Luna felt tears threaten again, but for the first time in her life, they weren't tears of pain or rage. They were something far more dangerous, tears of hope. "I'd like to try," she whispered. Outside, the sound of approaching wolves filled the night air. Her brother was coming home, and for the first time since that night on the battlefield, Luna thought she might actually deserve the chance to meet him. But first, there was a reckoning to be had with the man who'd stolen her life. And this time, she wouldn't be fighting alone. If you're still listening to this story up to this point, why don't you subscribe to this channel to continue getting impactful daily stories like this? We would be most grateful if you can do that to help boost this video to reach everyone. Thank you. Chapter 4. The training ground at the heart of Dante's territory was a circle of ancient stones worn smooth by centuries of werewolf combat. Luna stood in its center, sweat dripping from her brow as she faced 3 pack members simultaneously, their wolf forms circling her with predatory grace. "Again," called Victor Ravencrest from the sidelines, his voice carrying easy authority. Dante's cousin was everything the Alpha King wasn't, golden-haired where Dante was dark, charming where Dante was intense, beloved by the pack where Dante ruled through respect and fear. And this time, Luna, try not to hold back. These warriors can handle whatever you dish out. Luna wiped blood from her split lip, tasting copper and frustration. 3 weeks of training, and she still felt like an outsider wearing someone else's skin. The wolves circling her, Thomas, Sarah, and James, moved with the fluid coordination of pack mates who'd fought together for years. She moved like what she was, a killer trained to hunt alone. I don't want to hurt them, Luna said, dodging as Thomas feinted toward her left side. You won't, Victor assured her with a smile that didn't reach his ice-blue eyes. Trust your instincts. But that was the problem. Luna's instincts were screaming at her to kill, not to play. When Sarah lunged for her throat, muscle memory took over. Luna's hand shot out, silver claws extending, aimed directly at the she-wolf's heart. She pulled the strike at the last second, but not before her claws drew blood across Sarah's ribs. The she-wolf yelped and rolled away, shifting back to human form with tears in her eyes. I'm sorry, Luna gasped, rushing toward her. Sarah, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean. Yes, you did. Sarah's voice was quiet, resigned. You meant to kill me. Just like you killed my mate. The words hit Luna like a physical blow. She'd known this moment would come, had dreaded it since arriving at Dante's stronghold 3 weeks ago. Sarah's mate, David, had been among the warriors Luna had slaughtered at the Crimson Field. One of 300 lives she'd taken that night. Sarah, Thomas said gently, shifting back to human form. That's enough. Is it? Sarah's green eyes blazed with grief and rage. How many of us has she murdered, Thomas? How many mates, brothers, children? And now we're supposed to welcome her with open arms because the Alpha says so? A murmur ran through the gathered pack members watching from the stone circle's edge. Luna felt their eyes on her, some curious, some pitying, but too many filled with the same pain she saw in Sarah's face. The past cannot be undone, Victor said smoothly, stepping into the circle. But Luna has proven her worth. She chose our side against her mentor. She fights to protect our people now. Does she? James remained in wolf form, his amber eyes fixed on Luna with predatory intensity. Or is she just another weapon waiting to turn on us? The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Luna wanted to defend herself, to explain that she'd never choose to hurt them again, but the words stuck in her throat. Because part of her, the part trained by Aldrich, the part that had spent 20 years perfecting the art of killing werewolves, whispered that James might be right. Enough. Dante's voice cut across the training ground like a blade. The Alpha King strode into the circle, power radiating from him in waves that made every wolf present lower their heads instinctively. All except Victor, who merely smiled. We were just having a spirited training session, cousin, Victor said. Nothing Luna couldn't handle. Dante's golden eyes fixed on the blood trickling down Sarah's ribs, then moved to Luna's stricken expression. The session is over. Everyone out. Actually, Victor's voice carried a note of challenge. I think it's time we addressed the elephant in the room. Or should I say, the huntress. The pack members shifted uneasily, but none moved to leave. Luna felt the tension ratchet up another notch as Victor stepped closer to Dante, his posture just shy of openly confrontational. She's been here 3 weeks, Victor continued, his voice carrying to every corner of the training ground. 3 weeks of trying to pretend she belongs among us. But look around, Dante. Really look. Half our people flinch when she enters a room. The other half plot her death. Victor, Dante warned, but his cousin was just getting started. Sarah isn't the only one who's lost someone to Luna's blade. Marcus lost his daughter to her. Elena lost her son. Thomas's brother died at the Crimson Field, cut down by the woman you're calling mate. Each name hit Luna like a separate wound. She tried not to think about the faces behind her kills, the families destroyed by her actions. But hearing them laid out so starkly, seeing the pain in the gathered wolves' eyes, made it impossible to hide from the magnitude of her crimes. That's enough, Dante said, his voice carrying the weight of alpha command. But Victor didn't back down. Is it? Because I've been thinking, cousin. About pack law. About what happens when an alpha chooses, poorly. The challenge in those words was unmistakable. Luna felt the pack's attention sharpen, scenting blood in the water. Dante went perfectly still, his power coiling like a spring under pressure. Are you questioning my leadership, Victor? Victor's smile was sharp as winter. I'm questioning your judgment. You've let sentiment cloud your thinking. This woman, he gestured dismissively at Luna, is a liability. A weapon pointed at the heart of our people. She's my mate, Dante said quietly, but his words carried across the silent training ground. She's an abomination, Victor countered. A creature forged from our enemy's hatred. And every day she remains among us, she weakens our pack. Several wolves nodded in agreement. Luna saw Thomas look away, unable to meet her eyes. Even Sarah, who'd been openly hostile, seemed uncomfortable with Victor's brutal honesty. What are you suggesting? Dante asked, though Luna heard the danger in his voice. A choice, Victor said simply. The traditional challenge. Let the pack decide who they'll follow, an alpha blinded by supernatural bonds, or one who puts our people's safety first. Luna's heart stopped. A leadership challenge. She'd read about them in the Order's files, brutal affairs that usually ended in death. If Victor won, he'd have the right to exile her, or worse. Victor, don't do this, she said quietly. This isn't about pack politics. This is about Aldrich. About stopping him before he uses those artifacts against your people. Our people, Victor corrected with mock gentleness. And you're right, it is about Aldrich. Which brings me to my real offer. He pulled something from his jacket, a small communication crystal that pulsed with inner light. Luna recognized it immediately. Aldrich had used similar devices to coordinate Order operations. I've been in contact with your former mentor, Victor said, watching Luna's face carefully. He's quite eager to retrieve his lost weapon. And quite willing to negotiate for her return. You bastard, Dante snarled, but Victor held up a hand. Hear me out. Aldrich has offered information, the location of his current stronghold, details about the artifacts he stole, even intelligence about other Order cells. All in exchange for Luna. Absolutely not, Dante said. But here's the interesting part, Victor continued as if Dante hadn't spoken. He also offered an alternative. Help him eliminate you, Luna, and he'll share power with the new pack leadership. Those supernatural weapons could make us unstoppable. Luna felt the world tilt around her. You're talking about an alliance with the Order. With the people who've been hunting and killing werewolves for centuries. I'm talking about pragmatism, Victor said. Aldrich won't live forever. But those weapons could secure our dominance for generations. Over the corpses of innocent humans, Dante said flatly. Over the corpses of our enemies, Victor corrected. The way it should have been from the beginning. Luna looked around the training ground, seeing the pack members' faces as they absorbed Victor's words. Some looked horrified, but others looked thoughtful. Interested. The promise of power had always been seductive, especially to those who'd spent their lives being hunted. And if I refuse? Luna asked quietly. Victor's smile turned predatory. Then Aldrich disappears forever, taking those artifacts with him. How many werewolves will die when he perfects weapons designed specifically to kill our kind? How many packs will fall because you chose sentiment over strategy? The communication crystal pulsed brighter, and Aldrich's voice filled the training ground, distorted but unmistakable. Hello, my dear Luna. I do hope you're listening. Every wolf in the circle tensed, hackles rising at the sound of their greatest enemy's voice. I've been watching your integration attempts with great interest, Aldrich continued. Such a touching display of futility. Did you really think they'd ever accept you? You who've killed so many of their precious pack mates? Shut it off, Dante commanded, but Victor made no move to comply. I'm prepared to offer you one final gift, my dear, Aldrich's voice continued. One last chance to embrace what you truly are. Help young Victor claim his rightful place as Alpha, and I'll give you something you've always wanted, the location of every Order stronghold, every weapons cache, every hunter who ever raised a blade against the supernatural. You could have your revenge against those who truly deserve it. The crystal's light dimmed, and Aldrich's voice faded to nothing. In the resulting silence, Luna could hear her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. Victor stepped closer, his ice-blue eyes burning with ambition. What do you say, Luna? Will you be the weapon that saves our people? Or the sentimentality that destroys them? Luna looked at Dante, seeing the pain in his golden eyes. He'd offered her everything: love, acceptance, a place to belong. But at what cost? How many wolves would die because she'd chosen happiness over duty? The mating ceremony is tomorrow night, Victor said conversationally. Such a shame if something were to interrupt the proceedings. The threat was clear. Victor wasn't just challenging Dante's leadership, he was planning to kill him. And Luna was the key to his success. I need to think, Luna said quietly. Of course, Victor said with false sympathy. Such a difficult choice. Love or duty? Happiness or justice? Take all the time you need. But as he spoke, Luna caught movement at the edge of the training ground. Marcus Blackwood, her uncle, her only living connection to her parents, was approaching with a small group of older pack members. His weathered face was grim as he took in the scene. What's this about? Marcus asked, his storm-gray eyes moving between Victor and Dante. Family business, Victor said with a smile that made Luna's skin crawl. Luna was just deciding whether she wants to be part of this pack, or destroy it. Marcus's expression darkened. Luna would never. Wouldn't she? Victor's voice carried to every corner of the training ground. She's a killer, Marcus. A weapon forged in silver and blood. And weapons don't choose their targets, they simply strike where they're aimed. Enough, Dante said, his power building like a storm front. Victor, I'm ordering you to stand down. Are you? Victor's smile turned feral. Because I think the pack might have something to say about that. He raised his voice, addressing the gathered wolves directly. Who here has lost someone to the order? Who here has buried a mate, a child, a parent because of hunters like our dear Luna? Too many hands went up. Too many faces filled with pain and remembered loss. And who here believes she's truly changed? Who here trusts her not to turn on us the moment sentiment demands it? Fewer hands this time, but the silence from the rest spoke volumes. The mating ceremony proceeds as planned, Dante said firmly. Any who have objections can leave. Oh, the ceremony will proceed, Victor said, his eyes glittering with malice. But perhaps not as you expect. Before anyone could react, Victor's hand shot out, silver glinting in his palm. The blade took Marcus in the chest, sliding between his ribs with surgical precision. Luna's uncle gasped, his eyes wide with shock as blood bloomed across his shirt. No. Luna's scream tore across the training ground as Marcus collapsed to his knees, his hands pressed to the wound. Uncle, she whispered, dropping beside him as his blood pooled on the ancient stones. Uncle, stay with me. Marcus's storm-gray eyes found hers, and for a moment they cleared. Your parents would be proud, he gasped. You chose love over hate. Family over revenge. Don't talk, Luna said desperately, pressing her hands to his chest. We'll get help, we'll. But Marcus was already fading, his breathing growing shallow. Tell my nephew, tell Marcus, he has the best sister in the world. The last word was barely a whisper before the life faded from his eyes. Something broke inside Luna. Not cracked or damaged, completely, utterly destroyed. The careful control she'd been building for 3 weeks, the tentative peace she'd found with her dual nature, the fragile hope that she might actually belong somewhere, all of it shattered like glass under a hammer. Power erupted from her in a wave that knocked every wolf in the training circle to the ground. Her transformation was instantaneous and terrible, not the careful, controlled shift she'd been practicing, but something primal and apocalyptic. Her wolf form was larger than any natural werewolf, her fur silver-white shot through with veins of gold, her eyes blazing like twin suns. The berserker rage that took her was beyond anything in human experience. She was fury given form, vengeance wrapped in fur and fang in claw. Victor's scream as she reached him was cut short by jaws that could crush steel closing around his throat. But the rage didn't stop with Victor. It couldn't distinguish between friend and enemy, between pack and prey. Thomas barely managed to dodge as Luna spun toward him, her claws leaving gouges in the stone where his head had been. Sarah shifted and ran, her terrified howl echoing across the mountains. Even Dante, her mate, her anchor, became a target as the berserker fury consumed everything in its path. He met her charge in his own wolf form, massive and black as midnight, but still smaller than her rage-enhanced form. They collided with the force of avalanches, their battle destroying the ancient stone circle and sending cracks racing through the ground beneath them. Luna. Dante's voice somehow penetrated the red haze of her fury. Luna, come back to me. But she was beyond words, beyond reason, beyond everything except the need to destroy and kill and make the pain stop. Her claws raked across his ribs, drawing blood from the man who'd offered her everything. It was the sight of that blood, Dante's blood, spilled by her claws, that finally broke through the rage. Luna's wolf form collapsed back to human, leaving her kneeling naked and trembling beside Marcus's body as Dante shifted back to his own human form. What have I done? She whispered, staring at her hands that were covered in Victor's blood, in Dante's blood, in the blood of wolves who'd been trying to help her. Around the destroyed training ground, pack members slowly emerged from hiding. Their faces held a mixture of terror and awe as they looked at her, not as a potential pack mate, but as something far more dangerous. I'm sorry, Luna said, her voice breaking. I'm so sorry. But she knew sorry would never be enough. Not for Marcus. Not for Victor, despite his betrayal. Not for the fear she saw in every face around her. She was exactly what they'd always known her to be, a weapon too dangerous to wield, too powerful to control. And now she was alone again, surrounded by the wreckage of her own making. If you're still listening to this story up to this point, why don't you subscribe to this channel to continue getting impactful daily stories like this? We would be most grateful if you can do that to help boost this video to reach everyone. Thank you. Chapter 5. The crown of the Northern Territory was heavier than Luna had expected, both literally and figuratively. Made from silver and moonstone, it should have burned her hybrid flesh, but instead it sat cool against her brow, a reminder that she was something unprecedented, something the old rules couldn't contain. 3 months had passed since the training ground massacre, 3 months since Marcus's blood had soaked into ancient stones and her berserker rage had nearly killed the man she loved. 3 months of ruling beside Dante as his alpha queen, trying to build trust with a pack that still flinched when she entered a room. She stood now at the great window of their stronghold, watching the blood moon rise over the mountains. Somewhere out there, Aldrich was making his final preparations. She could feel it in her bones, the approaching storm, the weight of destiny settling around her shoulders like a burial shroud. The scouts have returned. Dante's voice came from behind her, deep and warm despite the tension thrumming through the room. Aldrich moved his operations to the old monastery on Shadow Peak. Military-grade fortifications, enhanced hunter squads, and something else. Something our people can't identify. Luna didn't turn from the window. He's ready then. The artifacts, whatever he's been working on, it's finally complete. Dante moved to stand beside her, his large frame radiating heat that should have been comforting. Instead, it only reminded her of how much she had to lose. The mate bond between them had deepened over the past 3 months, becoming less supernatural compulsion and more genuine partnership. Which somehow made it more terrifying. We don't have to do this tonight, he said quietly. We could wait, gather more intelligence, plan a better approach. Luna's laugh was bitter as moonlight. Could we? How many more werewolves will die while we're planning? How many more children will grow up orphaned because I'm too afraid to face my past? You're not afraid, Dante said with quiet certainty. You're being careful. There's a difference. But Luna shook her head. I am afraid. Terrified, actually. Not of dying, I made peace with that possibility long ago. I'm afraid of what I might become if I let the monster all the way out. Through the great window, the blood moon seemed to pulse with malevolent energy. Luna had felt restless all day, her hybrid nature responding to the celestial event in ways she didn't fully understand. Power thrummed through her veins like electricity, demanding release. The pack is assembled, Dante said after a moment. 200 of our finest warriors, plus allies from the eastern and western territories. Whatever Aldrich has planned, we'll be ready. Luna finally turned to face him, drinking in the sight of her mate in full battle armor. Dante Ravencrest was magnificent in war gear. Black leather reinforced with steel, weapons that gleamed like captured starlight, golden eyes burning with the fire of leadership. But she could see the worry etched around those eyes, the tension in his jaw that spoke of sleepless nights. I need to tell you something, she said quietly. Before we leave. Before, whatever happens tonight. Dante's expression grew wary. Luna. If something goes wrong, she continued, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands, if I become something you can't recognize or control, I need you to promise me you'll do what's necessary. Absolutely not. Dante, listen to me. Luna stepped closer, placing her hands on his chest where she could feel his heart thundering. The berserker rage I felt when Marcus died, that was just the beginning. I can feel something larger stirring inside me, something that makes that incident look like a temper tantrum. If Aldrich pushes me past my breaking point, then we'll face it together, Dante said firmly. Whatever you become, wherever this power takes you, you won't face it alone. Luna wanted to believe him, wanted to take comfort in his unwavering loyalty. But she'd seen what her rage could do, had felt the hunger for violence that lived in her bones. Some battles couldn't be won through love and partnership. A commotion in the courtyard below drew their attention. Through the window, they could see a lone figure approaching the stronghold gates, a young woman in hunter's leathers, walking with the confident stride of someone who knew she was expected. One of Aldrich's people, Dante said, his hand moving instinctively to his sword hilt. But Luna felt a flicker of recognition. No. I know her. Elena Vasquez, she was at the Citadel when I was a child. Aldrich's protégé after me. They descended to the Great Hall together, arriving just as Elena was escorted inside by grim-faced pack guards. The young hunter looked exactly as Luna remembered, olive skin, dark hair braided with silver threads, eyes like winter storms. But there was something different now, a haunted quality that spoke of terrible experiences. Luna, Elena said, her voice carefully neutral. You look different. Luna was acutely aware of how she must appear, silver white hair crowned with moonstone and precious metals, eyes that shifted between human green and wolf gold depending on her mood, an aura of power that made normal humans uncomfortable. She was no longer the weapon Aldrich had forged, but she wasn't entirely human either. So do you, Luna replied. What brings you here, Elena? Surely not sentiment. Elena's smile was sharp as broken glass. Aldrich sent me with a message. A final offer, he called it. I'm listening. Surrender yourself to him willingly, and he'll spare your precious pack. Continue this pointless resistance, and he'll demonstrate exactly what 20 years of preparation can accomplish. Dante's growl filled the hall, but Luna held up a hand for silence. And what exactly has he prepared? Elena's expression shifted, and for a moment Luna saw genuine fear in her eyes. Something that should never have been created. He calls them the purified, hunters enhanced with werewolf blood and synthetic wolfsbane, capable of killing supernatural creatures permanently. No healing factor, no regeneration, no return from the dead. How many? Luna asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. 50 so far. But that's not the worst part. Elena hesitated, then continued in a whisper. He tested the process on himself first. Luna, he's not human anymore. He's something between hunter and werewolf, but with none of the weaknesses of either. Silver doesn't burn him, wolfsbane makes him stronger, and he can track any supernatural creature across continents. Luna felt her blood turn to ice. Aldrich had always been dangerous, but this was beyond anything she'd imagined. There's more, Elena said, her voice breaking slightly. The enhancement process, it requires a catalyst. Fresh werewolf blood, taken while the subject is still alive. He's been experimenting on captured pack members for months. The hall erupted in snarls and howls of rage. Luna felt her own control slip for a moment, power radiating from her in waves that made the ancient stones tremble. Who? Dante's voice was deadly quiet. Elena pulled out a scroll, her hands shaking as she unrolled it. 17 names so far. Mostly lone wolves and pack outcasts, people who wouldn't be missed quickly. Luna scanned the list, her heart breaking with each familiar name. These weren't just random victims, they were people she might have known, might have met if her life had been different. And in exchange for my surrender? Luna asked. He stops. The purified program ends, the surviving test subjects are released, and he disappears forever. It was a lie, of course. Luna could see it in Elena's eyes, hear it in the careful way she phrased the offer. Aldrich would never simply disappear, not when he was so close to his ultimate goal. Tell him I'll meet him at midnight, Luna said finally. Shadow Peak Monastery. Just the two of us. Luna, no, Dante said sharply. We face this together or not at all. But Luna was already shaking her head. This was always going to be personal, Dante. Me and him, hunter and weapon, creator and creation. If I bring the pack, more people die. If I go alone. You might die, Dante finished. Yes, Luna agreed. But I might also end this. Finally and permanently. Elena shifted uncomfortably. There's one more thing. A gift from your former mentor. She produced a small vial filled with silver liquid that seemed to move of its own accord. Luna recognized it immediately, liquid wolfsbane, concentrated and purified. A single drop could kill most werewolves instantly. He said you'd know what to do with it, Elena said. When the time came. Luna took the vial, feeling its weight in her palm. Such a small thing to carry so much death. But as she held it, an idea began to form, terrible and beautiful and probably insane. Get out, she said to Elena. Leave this territory and don't come back. Whatever happens tonight, you don't want to be anywhere near it. Elena nodded and fled, escorted out by guards who looked relieved to see her go. When they were alone, Dante rounded on Luna with fury in his golden eyes. You're not going alone, he said flatly. I won't allow it. You won't allow it? Luna's own power flared in response to his challenge. I'm not one of your pack members to be commanded, Dante. I'm your equal, your partner, and your mate. And I'm telling you this is something I have to do myself. Like hell. They faced each other across the great hall, power crackling between them like lightning. The mate bond pulled them together even as their wills clashed, creating a tension that was both painful and electric. If you follow me, Luna said quietly, if you bring the pack to that monastery, I won't be able to control what happens. The berserker rage, the power that's been building inside me, it responds to threats against the people I love. If I see you in danger, if I think Aldrich might hurt you, I'll lose myself completely. Dante's expression softened slightly. And if I let you go alone and lose you, I'll never forgive myself. Luna stepped closer, reaching up to cup his face in her hands. Then don't lose me. Be here when I come back. Be my anchor, my reason to hold on to who I am instead of what I could become. For a long moment they stood in silence, the weight of unspoken words heavy between them. Finally, Dante covered her hands with his own. Come back to me, he said simply. I will, Luna promised, though they both knew it might be a lie. Shadow Peak Monastery crouched against the mountainside like a stone spider, its ancient towers reaching toward the blood moon with predatory hunger. Luna approached on foot, her enhanced senses cataloging every detail, the scent of old death and recent violence, the sound of machinery humming deep within the structure, the taste of ozone and supernatural energy thick in the air. The front gates stood open, an obvious invitation. Luna walked through them without hesitation, her hand resting on the silver blade at her hip. The courtyard beyond was empty except for stone gargoyles that seemed to watch her progress with malevolent eyes. Welcome home, my dear. Aldrich's voice echoed from the monastery's bell tower, amplified by some acoustic trick of the ancient architecture. Luna looked up to see him silhouetted against the blood moon, no longer the refined hunter-commander she remembered but something altogether more terrible. The transformation Elena had described was immediately apparent. Aldrich's frame had broadened, his movements carrying a predatory grace that spoke of enhanced speed and strength. His pale eyes now held flecks of gold, and when he smiled, Luna could see the gleam of fangs. "You've changed," she called back, her voice carrying easily in the thin mountain air. "As have you." Aldrich leaped from the tower, landing in the courtyard with inhuman grace. "Though I confess, you've exceeded even my wildest expectations. The power radiating from you is intoxicating." Up close, the changes were even more dramatic. Aldrich's skin had taken on a grayish pallor, and dark veins were visible beneath the surface. His fingernails had become claws, and there was something wrong with his scent, werewolf and human and something else entirely, something that made Luna's hybrid nature recoil. "The purified process," she said, understanding flooding through her. "You didn't just use it on your hunters. You perfected it on yourself." "Indeed." Aldrich circled her like a predator evaluating prey. "Werewolf strength and senses, human intelligence and adaptability, plus a few enhancements of my own design. I am what you could have become, Luna, if you hadn't let sentiment make you weak." "And the cost?" "There's always a cost with power like this." Aldrich's smile turned predatory. "The cost is irrelevant. What matters is the result. I am finally strong enough to do what needs to be done. To eliminate the supernatural threat permanently." "By becoming supernatural yourself?" "The irony is impressive, even for you." "By transcending the limitations of both species." Aldrich stopped circling, facing her directly. "I am evolution, Luna. The future of both human and werewolf combined into something greater." Luna studied his transformed features, seeing past the surface changes to something deeper and more disturbing. The enhancement process had given him power, yes, but it had also taken something essential away. There was no warmth in his eyes anymore, no recognition of her as anything more than an obstacle to be overcome. "You're dying," she realized. "The process is consuming you from the inside." Aldrich's expression flickered for just a moment, and Luna caught a glimpse of the man she'd once known, desperate, afraid, clinging to a purpose that had long since twisted into obsession. "I have enough time to finish what I started," he said. "Enough time to ensure the supernatural threat ends with your generation." "And the werewolves you've been experimenting on? The ones whose blood you used to create your purified hunters?" "Necessary sacrifices. Their deaths will prevent thousands more." Luna felt rage building in her chest, but she forced herself to remain calm. She needed to understand the full scope of his plan before she acted. "Show me," she said. "Show me what you've built here." Aldrich's eyes lit up with the enthusiasm of a craftsman eager to display his work. "Of course. You should see what your life's work has accomplished." He led her through the monastery's twisted corridors, past laboratories filled with equipment Luna didn't recognize and holding cells that reeked of fear and pain. The deeper they went, the stronger the scent of death became. 50 purified hunters, Aldrich said conversationally as they walked. Each one capable of killing a werewolf permanently, no healing factor, no supernatural resilience, just final death. "I've also developed airborne toxins that can incapacitate entire packs, tracking devices that work on supernatural signatures, and weapons that disrupt the mate bond itself. All to kill people who've never done anything to you personally. All to save humanity from the predators that would devour it." Aldrich stopped before a massive steel door marked with warning symbols. "But this is my masterpiece." The door opened to reveal a laboratory that belonged in Luna's worst nightmares. Dozens of tanks filled with silver liquid lined the walls, each one containing what looked like a human form in suspended animation. But as Luna looked closer, she could see the truth. These weren't humans at all, but something else entirely. "Synthetic werewolves," Aldrich said proudly. "Created from scratch using genetic material I've gathered over the years. They have all the strengths of natural werewolves, but none of the weaknesses. No pack bonds, no mate instincts, no sentiment to make them hesitate. Perfect soldiers in the war against the supernatural. Luna stared at the tanks in horror, understanding the full scope of his madness. You're not trying to eliminate werewolves. You're trying to replace them. With a better version, yes. One that serves humanity instead of threatening it. And where do I fit into this grand design? Aldrich turned to face her, his transformed features bright with anticipation. You, my dear Luna, are the final component. Your hybrid nature, your unique genetic signature, it's the key to perfecting the process. With your blood, I can create an army of beings like myself. Unstoppable, unlimited, and utterly loyal to the cause. Luna felt the vial of liquid wolfsbane in her pocket, its weight both comforting and terrible. And if I refuse? Then your mate dies slowly and painfully while you watch, followed by every member of his pack. The choice, as always, is yours. As if summoned by his words, a section of the laboratory wall slid away to reveal another chamber. Luna's heart stopped as she saw Dante chained to a metal table, silver restraints burning into his flesh. He was conscious but clearly in agony, his golden eyes finding hers across the distance. How? Luna whispered. Did you really think I wouldn't plan for your protective instincts? Aldrich asked mockingly. I've been watching you for months, Luna. I know every weakness, every vulnerability. Your mate followed you here despite your protestations, and my people were waiting. Luna's control began to slip as she saw the burns on Dante's skin, the pain in his eyes. Power radiated from her in waves that made the laboratory equipment spark and smoke. Let him go, she said, her voice carrying harmonics that made the floor tremble. Submit to the enhancement process, and I will. Your choice, my dear. Luna looked at the tanks surrounding them, at the synthetic horrors floating in their silver prisons, at the man who'd raised her standing proud among the instruments of genocide. Then she looked at Dante, seeing not just her mate but the future they'd planned together, leading their pack, protecting their people, maybe even finding a way to bridge the gap between human and supernatural. All of it balanced on the edge of a blade, waiting for her decision. She pulled the vial of liquid wolfsbane from her pocket, holding it up so the laboratory lights caught its silver gleam. You want my blood? She asked quietly. You want to see what I'm truly capable of? Before Aldrich could react, Luna bit through the vial's cork and drank the entire contents in one swallow. Liquid fire poured down her throat and into her veins. Her hybrid nature, which had always been in balance between human and wolf, suddenly tilted towards something else entirely. The wolfsbane didn't poison her, instead, it catalyzed a transformation that had been building since the night she first looked into Dante's eyes. No. Aldrich lunged toward her, but it was far too late. Power erupted from Luna in a wave that shattered every tank in the laboratory, sending silver liquid and synthetic nightmares spilling across the floor. Her transformation was immediate and absolute, not into wolf form, but into something unprecedented. She grew larger, her frame expanding to match Dante's in wolf form, her hair turning pure silver shot through with veins of gold. Her eyes blazed with inner fire, and when she opened her mouth, her voice carried the authority of ancient things. You wanted to see a monster, she said, her words making the monastery's foundations groan. Let me show you what 20 years of your training actually created. Aldrich met her charge with inhuman speed and strength, his claws raking across her ribs as they collided. But Luna was no longer bound by the limitations of either human or werewolf physiology. She was something new, something that combined the best of both species while transcending their weaknesses. Their battle destroyed the laboratory and much of the monastery around it. Aldrich fought with desperate fury, using every enhancement he'd given himself, but Luna was beyond him now. She was evolution itself, the answer to a question neither species had known they were asking. When it ended, Aldrich lay broken among the ruins of his life's work, his synthetic soldiers destroyed and his dream of supernatural genocide reduced to rubble. You don't understand, he gasped, blood frothing on his lips. The others, they're coming. Ancient things, drawn by the power you've claimed. This won't end with me. Luna knelt beside him, seeing past his madness to the broken man underneath. Then I'll face them too. But as myself, not as your weapon. Aldrich's eyes widened as understanding dawned. You planned this. The wolfsbane, the transformation, you knew what it would do. I hoped, Luna corrected. I believed that becoming the monster you trained me to be was the only way to defeat the monster you'd become. As Aldrich's life faded, Luna felt something shift in the supernatural world around them. Power called to power, and in the distance she could sense ancient things stirring, beings that had slept for centuries awakening to investigate the disturbance she'd created. But that was a problem for another day. Right now, she had a mate to free and a pack to return to. She found Dante still chained in the ruined laboratory, barely conscious from the silver poisoning but alive. As she broke his restraints, his eyes focused on her transformed state with wonder rather than fear. Still me, she said softly, her voice carrying new harmonics but still recognizably hers. Always still me. Dante reached up to touch her face, his fingers tracing the silver patterns that now marked her skin. My Luna, he whispered. My impossible, beautiful Luna. As they made their way out of the monastery ruins, Luna felt the weight of her transformation settling around her like a mantle. She was no longer human, no longer simply werewolf, but something unprecedented. Something that would need to stand between the supernatural world and the ancient threats now stirring in the darkness. But she wouldn't stand alone. Beside her walked the man who'd seen her at her worst and chosen to love her anyway, who'd offered her a place to belong when she'd had nothing left to lose. Together, they would face whatever came next. Even if the hungry darkness gathering at the edges of the world proved to be more terrible than anything Aldrich had ever dreamed. Thank you for watching this video. Subscribe, like and share this video to continue listening to this type of story daily and also, to appreciate this community too. I would like to hear your wonderful opinion about this story. Please comment below.